Last time, on the definitive origin of Marvel's Luke Cage, hero for hire, he had established his company and now was frustrated with how the media wasn't giving him no publicity, unlike his fellow superhero community, due to his controversial title as a hero for hire. So he decided to think of an alternate alias that will complement his strength. Moreover, he will receive a new client by the name of Mr. Overall Smythe, who was supposedly sent by his boss, the billionaire tycoon Tony Stark, to try and steal his special armor suit designed for deep space exploration. However, Luke Cage will be offended by the request, but retracted his aggression when Overall presented him a blank check just for Stark to test out the armor's factory security system so he could later fix any flaws in the mechanism. So thereafter, Luke Cage went on to infiltrate Stark Industries' multi-billion-dollar laboratory factory complex in Detroit with the blueprint of the facility in his hand. Unexpectedly, however, Luke Cage was confronted by Iron Man, which initiated a battle between the two. But Iron Man underestimated the brute strength of Luke Cage, which only added to his surprise when Luke Cage braced himself to withstand a hit from Iron Man's repulsor beam. So now an angered Iron Man had no choice but to go all out and fight Luke Cage with all he had, not letting up one bit if he wanted to win, even though Luke Cage caused his armor to experience a short circuit after damaging it. Subsequently, in the middle of the battle, it will be revealed Luke Cage was tricked by Overall, who had no real connection or association with Tony Stark, let alone Stark Industries. So our heroes decided to form an alliance to go after him, who they discovered stole Tony Stark's experimental aviation vehicle along with the star suit that had an exoskeleton built within it. So Luke Cage hastily made it to the tarmac and quickly caught up with the escaping aircraft known as the Skyscape before clinging on his side upon his takeoff while kicking and damaging the titanium steel door before breaking the reinforced lead glass window in order to get to Orville. Interestingly, during the heat of the moment, Luke Cage will come up with the name Power Man as his new alias, since it was synonymous with the political slogan Black Power. Unsurprisingly, Luke Cage, now Power Man, will defeat Orville after a brief battle, ripping out circuits of the star suit he was wearing, causing the suit to malfunction as he accidentally stumbled backwards out the open hatchway of the aircraft, down thousands of feet, presumably to his death. Furthermore, on a brighter note, Luke Cage was ready to build a future with the love of his life, Dr. Claire Temple. However, he being a fugitive convict on the run prevented him from achieving his goal, so he now had to find a way to clear his name. So with Dr. Noah Bernstein's suggestion, Luke Cage went on the search for the gang that his deceased best friend turned enemy, Willis Stryker, robbed for drugs, which was the same heroin drug Willis used to frame Luke Cage that sent him to prison. So with the help of Luke Cage's trusty street informer named Flea, he would find his answers on 48th and 10th, better known as Hell's Kitchen, where he would unfortunately discover Flea taking his last breath after being poisoned from a snake bite. Thereafter, back in his live-in workplace, Luke Cage would open a mysterious package with his name on it, but no return address, when suddenly he was attacked by two trained poisonous snakes that immediately struck at his neck. Unfortunately for them, Power Man's still hard skin was the least of their problems, as he pummeled them to death before discarding them like trash. Succeeding this, two goons by the name of Mike and Ike would thereafter pay him a visit in his office to see if he survived their boss's test before they could so-called peacefully talk to him by inviting him to their boss's office, which Power Man didn't appreciate none of, thus causing an all-out brawl on the third floor of the Gym movie theater, which Power Man would inevitably come up victorious before interrogating Mike, and next being led to their boss's spacious plush midtown office building where Power Man would first encounter Mr. Slick and then his boss, the man himself, Cornell Cottonmouth, an elegant speaking crime lord who was shockingly as strong as Power Man. Surprisingly, however, he only wanted Power Man to be part of the most successful illegal drug operation in the nation that he controlled. So Power Man decided to use that opportunity and join the organization in order to find some sort of proof that would clear his name. However, Cottonmouth made him go through an initiation test by retrieving his drug shipment that Boss Morgan hijacked. So Power Man went on to raid a townhouse where Boss Morgan stored the illegal drugs in a giant safe. So after Power Man defeated some of Boss Morgan's men, he blew up the safe and proceeded to leave with the narcotics, only to be confronted by Boss Morgan and more of his men, which one had a bazooka in his hand. Regrettably for him, he wouldn't get the chance to use it on Power Man, since Power Man gave them no time to unload the destructive weapon on him, as he ran through the mob like a freight train, before making it back to Cottonmouth with the drugs in his suitcase. So now that Power Man was officially a member of the organization, days would follow with Mr. Slick showing him the ins and outs of the business, Shockingly, Power Man couldn't locate Cottonmouth's records of his operation, so he made the decision to contact Lieutenant Burt of the New York City Police Department so he could shut down the criminal enterprise. Nonetheless, Cottonmouth would uncover Power Man's plot and proceeded to attack him with powerful blows that gave Power Man something to think about. However, things would turn worse for Cottonmouth when his assistant Mr. Slick tried to intervene, which distracted Cottonmouth, causing Power Man to strike him into Mr. Slick, who accidentally crashed out the building's window 35 floors down to his death. Unbeknownst to Power Man, during that fateful moment, Mr. Slick mentally held Cottonmouth's records since he had a photographic memory. Finding this out, Power Man, in a fit of rage, reverse press handle slammed Cottonmouth with extreme force that knocked him unconscious before leaving disappointed. However, fortunately, Luke Cage finally made it on the front page of the Daily Bugle newspaper. Furthermore, after purchasing flowers for his love, Claire Temple, he will find out she abruptly left to Los Angeles for reasons unknown and requested to Noah to tell Luke Cage not to try and follow her, since she no longer wants to be in a relationship with him, which broke his heart. Succeeding this, the Jim Movie Theater will be under attack by the original Power Man, the supervillain Eric Jostin, who impressively once defeated Petro Maximoff, also known as Quicksilver, then next Steve Rogers, famously known as Captain America, and lastly Clint Barton, better known as Hawkeye. Nevertheless, Eric had now set his sights on Luke Cage for supposedly stealing his nickname, so a battle ensued where the heavy hitter Eric, empowered by the same machine that created Wonder Man, gave Luke Cage a tough challenge. Nonetheless, Luke Cage would defeat Eric and next stripped him from the title of Power Man. Succeeding this, Power Man will find himself working alongside the Defenders, Doctor Strange, Nighthawk, and the Incredible Hulk to battle the Wrecking Crew, Thunderbolt Elliot Franklin, Bulldozer Henry Camp, Power Driver Brian Kaluska, and their leader, the Wrecker, Dirk Garthright, who recently destroyed a newly built building Power Man was hired to protect as they searched for a gamma bomb. Subsequently, Power Man will battle both Thunderbolt and Power Driver before our heroes inevitably defeated the Wrecking Crew. Not long after, Luke Cage will once again be attacked by the crime fighter Thomas Stewart, also known as Stiletto, who is now accompanied by his brother Timothy Stewart, better known as Disgust, in an intense but strenuous battle that took longer than expected, with the duo not letting up one bit before they were inevitably defeated, when surprisingly their father, Taylor Stewart, the old fired warden from Seagate Penitentiary, showed up to persuade Luke Cage from further attacking his sons. Thereafter, Luke Cage, accompanied with C.W. Griffith, the manager of the Jim Movie Theater, would travel to Los Angeles to see what was going on with Claire Temple, only to shockingly encounter during the route long thought dead Colonel Gideon Mace, who managed to survive his so-called watery grave by unscrewing the heavy titanium spike ball attached to his arm that was pulling him down. Nevertheless, he was back at it again with nefarious plans to reshape America by building a secluded community consisting of 200 carefully selected families that could be easily manipulated after arming and conditioning them for his mission to take over the country. However, DW managed to secretly adjust Gideon Mace's sound system to broadcast everything he was boasting about on the outside loudspeakers, so the citizens can hear his unpatriotic plans, which led them to storm his city hall, but not before Luke Cage took out his security guards and inevitably defeated Gideon Mace, while the citizens rioted outside to bring down the town known as Security City. Furthermore, now making it to South California, Luke Cage along with DW would track Claire Temple at the fairgrounds, where Luke Cage would confront the love of his life on why she suddenly up and left him without a reason, which she would reveal she traveled all the way to Los Angeles to support her ex-husband, the biochemist Dr. Bill Foster, famously known as Black Goliath, who was currently stuck at the height of 15 feet after experimenting with the PIM formula and needed to make some quick money working at the circus to fund his project and correct his height, not wanting to ask Tony Stark or Henry Pym for help or money, which is the reason Claire Temple didn't want Luke Cage to follow her, because Black Goliath had connections with the Avengers, who might find out Luke Cage was an escaped convict. Unsurprisingly, Black Goliath would encounter Luke Cage, which ignited a physical confrontation with the two powerhouses, who went on to clash like titans, while eventually knowing it was senseless, but continued to fight for the woman they loved, until they were interrupted by the circus of crime that consisted of the Ringmaster, the Clown Funny Man, the Great Gambinos, the Cowboy Livewire, whose heart wasn't in the fight, Strongman, and Princess Python, who was attracted to Luke Cage, as the circus of crime goal was to forcefully recruit our heroes to their team using hypnotic control. Subsequently, it would be Claire and Luigi Gambino to rescue our heroes after snapping them out of their trance, as they next joined forces to take on the circus of crime and eventually defeated them. However, the celebration would be short-lived for Black Goliath when Claire chose to leave with Luke Cage instead of him. Succeeding this, Luke Cage will be called up by Dr. Bruce Banner, along with Matthew Murdock, better known as the Man Without Fear, Daredevil, and Damien Hellstrom, also known as the Son of Satan, to help rescue Valkyrie, Nighthawk, and Doctor Strange from their captors, the white supremacist group known as the Sons of the Serpent, and their leader Jean-Claude Pennyworth, who was also the one who stole Dr. Elliot Franklin's miniature gamma bomb and notes to patent them for the company he was working for. So with the unexpected assist from Hank Pym as Yellow Jacket, our heroes would triumph over evil. Moreover, at 2 o'clock in the morning, Power Man will find himself on a rooftop in Manhattan facing off with the hitman Cockroach Hamilton. In a 6-barrel shotgun he named Josh on 7th Avenue and Broadway, about to murder a man named Harry Wentworth, who worked for Adonis Chemical and stole maps of the transportation routes for a shipment of, unbeknownst to Luke Cage, who was hired to follow him, deadly gas canisters. Unfortunately, Cockroach Hamilton would successfully make his escape, but not before ending Harry's life, as Luke Cage failed to rescue him in time, when Cockroach Hamilton blasted Luke Cage off the side of the building, dislocating Luke Cage's shoulder. Later on, after Luke Cage received vital information from Detective 2nd Grade Quentin Chase, he would make his way to Adonis Chemical to interrogate the man who hired him, Charlton Grunge, before wiring his jaw shut. Then next, headed out to the shipment dock on the Harlem River, where he would encounter Cockroach Hamilton again, who shot him this time with the deadly gas, which knocked him unconscious, before Cockroach Hamilton fled once more. Succeeding this, Luke Cage would inevitably encounter Cockroach Hamilton yet again, but this time Luke Cage would finally come up on top, after giving him a good old-fashioned beating, while next destroying his 6-barrel shotgun. Following this, Luke Cage would go on to beat the snot out of Cockroach Hamilton's employer, the crime lord infamously known as Raymond Piranha Jones. Moreover, the husband of Valkyrie, Jack Norris, would contact Luke Cage to help aid the Defenders, Doctor Strange, Nighthawk, and now the Soviet superheroine Tanya Belinsky as Red Guardian, take down Plant Man Samuel Smithers after the Hulk left the team. Following this, Kyle Richmond would pay Luke Cage in advance to secure his service as a part-time member of the Defenders, since he could only help occasionally without pay. Thereafter, when Ben Grimm, famously known as The Thing, lost his powers after turning back into a human during a fight with the Hulk, whose body gamma radiation canceled out Ben Grimm's form, Reed Richards, famously known as Mr. Fantastic, will go on to temporarily replace him with Luke Cage, since Fantastic Four Incorporated must maintain 4 superpowered members at all times. So now that Luke Cage was also being paid to be a full-fledged member of the Fantastic Four, which he would donate most of his earnings to charity, he would help his new teammate take down the Wrecker, who recently robbed a bank after being mind-controlled by the Puppet Master, Philip Masters. Not long after, Luke Cage will be also mind-controlled by him, as he went on to attack Susan Storm, better known as the Invisible Woman. Then next, defeat Ben Grimm, and after, Johnny Storm, known as the Human Torch, followed by Mr. Fantastic himself, after they restrained from using their full capabilities. Thereafter, Luke Cage moved on to the control center of the facility and destroyed it before taking off in the Fantastic Four's transportation aerial vehicle called the Fantastic Car. Unsurprisingly, with Ben Grimm now wearing an exoskeleton suit created by Reed Richards of his former self that is nearly as strong but geared to only his specifications to battle the mind-controlled Luke Cage, until the Puppet Master's control over him was interrupted, and our heroes managed to capture the Puppet Master and send him back to prison. Moreover, Luke Cage will battle the new Comestro, Arch Morton, who prior forced the original and newly reformed Comestro, Curtis Carr, on how his alchemy gun works, which upon release from prison, Arch Morton went to work on it, only for the alchemy gun to explode in his hands, spraying special chemical properties, which ironically gave him the ability to change matter without the use of the alchemy gun. So after a long and tedious battle with the new Comestro, turning things into rubber, tar, glass, paper, and even quicksand, Power Man finally managed to defeat him with a nullifier device created by Curtis Carr. Not long after, the Defenders, with Luke Cage tagging alongside the Hulk, took on and took down the deadly new emissaries of evil, Alexis Sozovich, better known as Rhino, Silas King, a mutant called Solar, Master of the Solar Flame, Ralph Roberts, the Cobalt Man, a disgruntled former Stark Enterprise employee who created a duplication of the Iron Man armor out of cobalt, and lastly, their leader, the mad genius scientist named Elaha Star, alias Egghead, who was after the largest ruby in the world, the deadly Star of Kapistan Jewel, sacred to a secret Pakistan religious cult. Furthermore, Luke Cage, who always been a loner, felt it annoying always working with the Defenders, so he decided to leave the team in New York altogether to hide out in Chicago after the IRS was getting close to discovering his true identity when they charged him with tax evasion. And now Claire and Noah was at risk of being charged with abating a fugitive, as he went on to change his name once again, this time to Mark Lucas, while coincidentally and inadvertently being attacked by his arch nemesis, the military madman Gideon Mace, who was really discharged from the army for insubordination, mental incompetence, suspicion of combat activity, independent of orders, attitude consistently one of violent disregard of standard army operational procedures, as he was unfit to command or serve. So Gideon Mace, who was on the same train thinking Luke Cage was trailing him. So after a tense battle that made its way to Chicago, where Gideon Mace was training disillusional, overzealous veterans of war in all forms of martial arts to kill mercilessly in his end goal to take over the government with a bloody coup d'etat and make America great again. Needless to say, Luke Cage, Power Man, would defeat Gideon Mace after he fell through and down an elevator shaft, presumably to his death. Succeeding this, Luke Cage will be forced to leave Chicago and make his way back to New York after leaving Lake Michigan, where he had to take a job by the wealthy European crime lord John McIver, also known as Bushmaster, who abducted Claire Temple and Noah, while also having the secret tape recording of Willis Stryker framing Luke Cage, which was provided by the neighborhood genius called Gadget, in order for Luke Cage to bring him the detective Misty Knight, as Shades and Comanche was also hired to keep a close watch on him. So Luke Cage made his way to the West Side Mansion townhouse owned by the millionaire Daniel Rad, where he instead encountered Misty Knight's partner Colleen Wing, which they would get into a brief battle before Luke Cage accidentally knocked her unconscious and broke her arm, when suddenly Misty Knight arrived, going on to try and defend herself against him, before she too was quickly knocked out. However, Misty Knight's other partner, the living weapon, Danny Rad, famously known as the immortal Iron Fist, who was amongst the best, if not the best fighter in the world, fully channeled the soul of the dragon, Show Lao, into his fist to strike Luke Cage. Surprisingly enough, Luke Cage managed to remain conscious, let alone survive, while going on to attack Iron Fist in a berserker fury. Surprisingly, Iron Fist's best martial arts skills wasn't able to slow Luke Cage down until Luke Cage decided to snap out of his untamed rage, realizing he wasn't their enemy, and went on to explain to them the full story that led him to do what he did, which during the session, Misty Knight went on to discover his criminal background after secretly running his fingerprints through the National Crime Information Center database. So with the help of Misty Knight's detective work, they tracked down where Bushmaster was holding Claire Temple and Noah, which was the no longer operational Seagate Penitentiary. So with the help of Misty Knight and Iron Fist, they took on Bushmaster's mercenaries, his lieutenants Shades and Comanche, and finally Bushmaster, who was the only one Luke Cage ever fought that didn't underestimate his strength, being the reason he forced Noah into enhancing his strength beyond Luke Cage's on the solitary confinement lower levels within Bernstein's new innovative lab, engaging in battle before the half-a-ton I-beam they were fighting over struck and punctured Noah's chemical vat, causing a dangerous boiling hot fluid to shoot everywhere, including on the main high-voltage cables, which caused an explosion that rocked the facility and collapsed the lower section, presumably killing Bushmaster, while Luke Cage managed to survive. Thereafter, Misty Knight would emerge with Gadget, who relinquished the recording tape to Luke Cage and got amnesty for it, as they all next left the facility that had Shades and Comanche along with the mercenaries locked in cells for the feds to deal with. Not long after, Luke Cage will finally be exonerated of all charges, and after be seen celebrating with his friends and loved ones at the penthouse of Danny Rad's lawyer, Sharon Hogarth, who took on Luke Cage's criminal case. However, the celebration will be short-lived after Luke Cage's girlfriend, Claire Temple, called it quits because her life has been nothing but a living nightmare after another ever since she's been in a relationship with him while trying to accept his dangerous lifestyle that often inadvertently put hers in danger. Coincidentally, soon after, Stiletto and Disgust would crash the party and attack Luke Cage. Subsequently, they were in for a surprise when Iron Fist, Colleen Wing, joined the fight against them. Following this, the fight would make its way outside in the snowstorm on top of the 35-story building and back into the destroyed penthouse after falling through the roof. Nevertheless, Misty Knight brought in the cops, who Stiletto will go on to shoot with a deadly dart, which caused Misty Knight, in a blind fit of rage, to not only shoot Stiletto in the arm, but almost take his life by shooting him in the head. Luckily, Luke Cage was there to stop the bullet from her .357 Magnum with his hand, as surprisingly, Lieutenant Raphael had survived his assassination attempt when the 10 on his police badge slowed down the force of the dart from penetrating his skin, which succeeding this, Luke Cage will start dating the fashion model Harmony Young, and now working at Misty Knights and Calling Wings private investigation firm called Nightwing Restoration. Preceding this, Jiren Hogarth will go on to be Luke Cage's new business manager and help him revamp his hero for hire company by having a second office on the 14th floor of a building on Park Avenue that mostly caters to the wealthy, as he and his business partner apply for certain licenses, prospective clients to meet, public relations to build, appointments to make, and loans to negotiate, while adding Iron Fist as Luke Cage's partner, which Iron Fist would later train Luke Cage in martial arts in order to discipline him and using his speed, grace, and coordination to add along with his strength. Unfortunately, Heroes for Hire Incorporated will be on retainer for certain corrupt corporations that went against our hero's moral judgment, like when they had to go after the hero vigilante El Aguila, the avenging eagle, who was striking at injustice in all its forms. Nevertheless, Luke Cage and Iron Fist will help El Aguila get away after feeling their client, Mr. J.P. Preston, was unjust with his actions towards the vigilante. Interestingly enough, it will be revealed Luke Cage had his outfits tailor-made to all look the same, with his shirts made with the finest silk, which ironically, Bruce Banner shared the same tailor. Moreover, Luke Cage and Iron Fist will defeat the likes of the professional assassin Frank Payne, also known as the Constrictor, who had an adamantium whip equipped with electric charge, and his partner, the feral mutant Victor Creed, infamously known as Sabretooth. Thereafter, they will defeat the long-thought-dead Bushmaster on his yacht in his quest to forcefully have Noah recreate the Power Man experiment once more in order to reverse the procedure that was done to him by using Luke Cage as the basis, after Bushmaster discovered his bones and internal organs were turning still hard while his flesh was wasting away by inches, making it increasingly difficult to move. Unfortunately, it will be too late for Luke Cage as he lost his powers during the experiment just before Iron Fist inevitably rescued him and Noah, until he later regained it back when battling and defeating Arthur Nagin, a former surgeon whose head was transplanted onto a gorilla's body, as he went on to knock Luke Cage, who was already soaking wet from rain, into a 10,000 volt fence. Now that Luke Cage was back as Power Man, he and Iron Fist will go on countless missions and adventures together, like when Sabretooth attacked and hospitalized Harmony Young, disfiguring her face after mistaking her for Misty Knight, who he was really after, which had pissed Luke Cage so off, he tracked down Sabretooth and his partner, the Constrictor, down at a jazz club called The Last Call on 8th Street and engaged in an intense battle to the death, with Iron Fist backing him up against the Constrictor. Shockingly enough, Luke Cage was on the verge of choking Sabretooth to death had it not been for Iron Fist to convince him otherwise, and had the authorities instead deal with the two supervillains. Thereafter, at the hospital, Harmony Young will be out of intensive care and now in stable condition, as her next step for recovery will be plastic surgery. Furthermore, Luke Cage will be approached by Mark Spector, better known as Moon Knight, to be part of an urban team of warriors called the Marvel Knights, in order to form an ever-changing, ever-unpredictable street-level strike force, which Luke Cage would agree to, as he joined with another of Earth's greatest martial artists, Zhang Shang-Chi, along with Daredevil, Natasha Romanoff, aka Black Widow, and Tandy Bowen, aka Dagger, to take center stage to bring down the criminals of the underworld. Succeeding this, Luke Cage and Iron Fist together would take down Leyland Owlsley, also known as the Owl, and other goons, when they encountered the superheroine who was experimenting with a new superhero identity, Nitrous, alias the private investigator Jessica Jones, that was already fighting the criminals within a warehouse during their mission to steal some genetic formula for the Russian mob. However, what's shocking, one of the goons stupidly brought two of their children along for the ride. So in order to get temporary custody of the children so that social services doesn't get involved, Jessica Jones revealed her secret identity to authorities in order to get a background check to be approved, which she was. Impressed with her actions, Luke Cage will later show up at her apartment, bringing her a sandwich along with a first aid kit to clean the wound on her back she got from the brawl. So after they got properly acquainted, they became the best of friends. Sometime in between, Luke Cage and Harmony Young will shockingly stop seeing each other, while later, Jessica Jones will end up sleeping with Luke Cage during a somewhat drunken moment at a bar he owned, and continue to see him afterwards, confiding to him her darkest secrets, while occasionally indulging in sexual rendezvous with him, even though her best friend, Carol Danvers, also known as Captain Marvel, hooked her up with Scott Lang, better known as Ant-Man, which they too was also sexually involved. Surprisingly, during this period, Luke Cage, who was promiscuous, would date and have sexual relations with Jennifer Walters, famously known as She-Hulk. Consequently, later, Jessica Jones would discover she was 3 months pregnant with Luke Cage's child, so she had no choice but to confess to Scott Lang about her infidelity, which officially ended their relationship. Following this, before she could reveal her pregnancy to Luke Cage, he disclosed his true feelings for her in a touching moment, which she then tells him about the baby in her stomach, and the two decide to start a new chapter in their lives by living together. Moreover, Steve Rogers would visit Luke Cage to recruit him in the new Avengers team, so with much consideration, Luke Cage would join. Succeeding this, Jessica Jones would give birth to a beautiful baby girl inside Doctor Strange's Sanctum Sanctorum, as her parents named her Danielle, after her grandfather and Luke Cage's best friend Danny, just before he proposed to her, which she would accept. As time progressed, they went on to have a wonderful wedding, with Stan Lee officiating the ceremony, surprisingly without incident from any supervillain attempted to crash the event. Furthermore, Steve Rogers, now the new head of national security, brought the Thunderbolts under his control as a secret black ops and asked Luke Cage to supervise the rehabilitation program in hopes to help the world while guiding powerful threats to the side of justice. Moreover, during an unprecedented event, the Avengers would sponsor Luke Cage as a candidate to run for mayor of New York City against Wilson Fisk, which he would go on to win, and next assign the superheroine and capable leader Monica Rambeau to take his place in supervising the Thunderbolts. That being said, Luke Cage is Marvel Comics' Power Man.